Hello, welcome. Today we are going to continue our introduction of the IEP Toolkit, and hopefully all of these different um, angles that we're approaching this from will all get you really psyched for the release of the toolkit. I am very excited about it. It's very comprehensive, and I think it will be a great help to for parents and advocates to stay organized, as well as to have a better understanding of what is what a child is entitled to, what the parents' rights are, things like that, and how to best get your way. I have said over and over and over again that if it is not written down, it didn't happen. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today is why that's so and the importance of making sure that not only is it in writing, but that it is confirmed and that the right tone is used. Because you really have to assume that any time that you're talking to school, involved with the IEP team, involved with any of the service providers, um, anyone who's helping with accommodations or assistive technology, whoever it is, you really need to assume that um, although you're communicating with them right now, what you're really doing is communicating with the court. Because if you don't get your way, that's exactly where you could end up. You could end up in a due process hearing, and you could end up having your writings be discovery and being um, read by all those administrators and admitted into evidence. And then you would have strangers, judges, or judicial clerks, or whoever it might be, now interpreting your writing. And so I really want to focus on that today and what is the best way to document and the language to document with and um, who to share it with, what to do with it. So it's really, really important to remember that this will be independent evidence that supports your position. And so it needs to be clear, it needs to be concise, it needs to be thorough. And in that vein, we're going to start with really the different kinds of documentation. You can do logs, you can do calendars, you can do journals, and they each have a different purpose. You should also keep copies of letters, reports, consent forms, emails, um, phone messages, anything and everything. So on your log, that will be your contacts with anyone at school, um, whether it be the person setting up a meeting or someone you've sent something to or a conversation with a teacher or someone making you aware of something. You should document it in a log. It should be an ongoing log from today forward because you never know when you're going to need it. So when you're doing that, you want to make sure that I my clients, I give them a spiral notebook and they just start writing. Um, if but any spiral notebook will do. Some people like to use a date book format. I don't prefer that because it has I know a limited amount of space in the square for that day. Um, and other people do it on their computer and they just have a running log. And the big thing about this is it has to be written contemporaneously. You can't go back, you know, and try to remember what was said 2 months ago. It's not going to work. It's not going to be valuable evidence. If you need it to be evidence, it's not a good idea. Um, so not only should you keep copies of all any correspondence you get or any correspondence you send, you should also document that in the logbook. You have to remember that there'll be some consent forms, there'll be some permission slips. Always get a copy. Those forms will establish exactly what you agreed to, and it's really important for you to have them. The documents are going to provide the really important questions, the W questions that we've talked about before. They're going to talk about who, what, why, when, how, and explain. And so when looking at those, what services or supports did the school agree to provide? What services or supports did the school refuse to provide? What reasons did the school give for the refusal? Who attended the meeting when the decisions were made? Why was the parent not advised about this meeting, if that's the case? When was the meeting held? When did the parent receive the IEP in the mail? When did the school inform the parent about the change in programming or placement? And then how did the school explain the implementation of the new IEP? What concerns did parents give? Are they outlined in the IEP? Why did the parent give those concerns? And so it's really important to document questions asked and answers given by who gave them, where it happened, time, and date. So the contact log, again, should be all contacts between you and the school. And again, it should be messages, phone calls, letters, notes, anything between you and school staff. And if you do use your computer, I would recommend that you print your log often. When you're putting an entry in a log for a telephone call, for example, you want to put who the person's name, their title, their phone number, when, the date, and the time and place of the contact. Did you run into this person in the hallway? Did they call you? Was it a text message? What you wanted if you initiated the contact, what was the purpose of the call, and then what you were told. A short description of the reaction or the solution or whatever action or response there was going to be. And then notes, and that would be, any other information that's important or useful. One thing that I will tell you, since this will possibly have some evidentiary value in the future, this is not where you put how pissed off you are. There's no room for emotion in the log. You want this to be the facts, just the facts. And it's really, really important. If you sense emotion or frustration or arrogance from as the reaction to your questions, you could make a note about that, but unless it really is going to make a difference in the outcome for your child, it's really not important if the person was nice to you or not. So let's keep our eye on the ball here. So again, the contact logs are really helpful, and if you have a meeting with someone outside of the IEP team meeting, the annual IEP meeting, you should, again, that would be an entry in your log. Meeting with so-and-so, child's gen ed teacher, and then who would be, which gen ed teacher it is, what the purpose was for the meeting, a concern about grades or accommodations or lack of accommodations, when, date, and time, and then what you wanted as the parent, what the teacher told you if you're meeting with the teacher, and then any notes. So if you're going to see the teacher because your child failed, science, then you want to put that in the notes, that was kind of the triggering event that caused the meeting to happen. The reason that you do this is obviously because at some point, if you ever have to testify, you then could use this to refresh your recollection as to what happened when. Now, the journal is different. Um, Again, the journal is not the home for your emotional frustration with the process, the people, or just uh, a time to vent about, I can't believe I have to do this. What does school do? Which is something that we hear from parents all the time. Why do I have to advocate for my child? Why can't the educators just do it? And we talked about that yesterday at length, so I'm not going to go there right now. But um, this journal could be subpoenaed by the school district if you do go to due process. So that's important to remember when you're writing. And you need to really write your journal as if it's going to be read by a stranger, by someone who doesn't understand the alphabet soup of special ed. You want to make sure that you write everything out. Don't use ADHD. Don't assume they know what that means, even though that's very commonplace. Don't assume they know what an IEP is. Don't assume they know what an IEE is. Don't assume that they know what an FBA is, or a BIP, or any of the other, uh, acronyms that are used in special ed. So you always want to make sure that you do that and are very clear about it. You can journal about any problem reports. So if your child gets in trouble, if they're being bullied, you want to document that by the date, the problem, the people who were involved, um, the facts, the who, what, when, where, how, and explain. What happened? When did it happen? Who was involved? Why did it happen? Did anybody witness it? What action did the school take? What action did you take? Other facts. And again, you want to journal that, and you may want to also notify the school about that concern. Um, if you are going to call about a problem, be prepared. Make sure you know who is the problem solver, who is the person that you can talk to get a response. Write down your questions before you make the call so that you are efficient and right to the point. Make sure you document those questions in your journal and document the phone call in your log. It should all tie together. So let's talk a little bit about writing letters. Um, you basically are going to write letters for 6 or 7 different reasons: to request information, to request action, to provide information about an event or describe that event, to decline a request, to express appreciation, or to express a concern. Letters build relationships, they set expectations, they set a tone for any discussions that will follow. It's really important to understand that. Always keep in mind what's the purpose of the letter and what do I want to happen because of my letter? What is my goal? What is the end? What do I need to accomplish? So, um, some examples: when you're requesting information, you might request your child's confidential and cumulative file. You might request evaluation results from to be provided to you before an IEP meeting. You might want to request test scores as standard scores and percentile ranks. You may want to have some information about any standardized tests that your child may have to participate in the upcoming year so that you know what test accommodations need to be discussed at the meeting. If you are writing a letter to request action, that could be that your child be evaluated for special ed initially. It could be requesting an IEP meeting because you have concerns about your child's performance or progress. It could be to just request a meeting with a teacher to discuss your child's progress or lack of in a specific subject. And you can always request a reevaluation or new evaluations, different kinds of evaluations for your child if you have concerns. That must be in writing. All those things have to be in writing. If you're writing a letter to provide information or to document a problem, be very, very, very specific. If you're if you want to just tell them about a new evaluation and you're going to include it, just put right in the letter that, on June 25th, 2020, Joey received a new comprehensive speech and language assessment. It's attached for your review and consideration during the September 5th IEP meeting. Uh, and, I hope that these recommendations in this evaluation will be adopted by the team. So you're saying what it is, why you're giving it to them now, what purpose you want it to have, and what result you want it to have. That is a really good letter. If you're documenting a problem, then again, it's more difficult because you're talking about something that's negative, but you need to keep it positive. So you want to use an approach where you give a lot of information about your child. Dear so-and-so, as you may recall, Joey is in 5th grade. He has been, diagnosed as this. He is eligible for special ed services because of this. He has had an IEP in place since 2nd grade. There have been modifications to the IEP in the following areas over time. I am concerned that that he is not progressing at the rate he should be, and that we don't have any baseline data right now. Here's where you have to be nice. It's very easy to say, I demand I get these things for my son right now. But if you want to get them, as we all know, you get more with honey than vinegar. If you want to get them right now, then it would be best to say, I would like to discuss with you when evaluations could take place, or or if any additional evaluations can take place, or I'd like an independent educational evaluation because what this evaluation says is contrary to what I see at home. And so you just want to spin it, and you're not accusing, and you're not saying they did a bad job. You're just saying, I have this information. I know more about my child than anyone. So let's look at it from this point of view. If you are dealing with a suspension or a disciplinary issue and you disagree with that action, request a face-to-face meeting. And you can put in there that, despite, your belief that the punishment is inappropriate, you think it's really important to get together and discuss how this is affecting your child, and to really talk about the feelings of what is going on. This helps to elicit sympathy, and it will give you a better result. It's also really important to express appreciation in your letter. And, some ways to do that are to, write a thank you note after the IEP meeting for all their time. They were taken away from other tasks and responsibilities. And, you can always say in there that, you want to give positive feedback, and you want to end politely. That this is not where you say, I can't believe you don't agree with me, and, I'll see you outside. So that is just something to keep in mind. Good letters need to be clear, everyday language. Short sentences, short paragraphs. The first sentence should get to the point so that the person continues to read. You want to make sure you put in there what you're expecting the reader to do, prompt them to act. You always want to give them contact information to respond so that they don't have to go dig it up. And you should always proofread. Um, you should remember the rules of adverse assumptions, and that's a whole topic that we could do on another day for a full session. But basically, what that means is when you're writing letters, you need to assume you're not going to get what you want. You have to assume that a due process hearing is going to happen. You have to assume that the problem's going to get worse and assume that a successful outcome depends on how well you describe the events that caused you to write the letter in the first place. So it can be very powerful evidence in your favor if you tell the reader why you're writing the letter, what you want the reader to do, cite facts that support your position or request, and be sure the facts are correct and undisputed because you have your logs, you have your calendar, you have your journal, and you can back up everything that you're saying. Don't make demands, don't apologize, don't threaten to sue. Always end with respectfully yours or very truly yours or sincerely or whatever you like. You should always put in there a time limit for a reply. So, don't make demands, but you can say, um, I hope to hear from you in the next 14 days so that we can mutually, you know, discuss our next steps, or we can mutually put in place a plan to further Joey's progress or whatever it's going to be. Um, if they don't respond, you write a second letter. You include a copy of the first letter. You set a shorter deadline, like 10 days. And if you still don't get a response to the second letter, then you go up the chain of command and you send them their own letter and the other two that went unanswered. You might want to read your letter to someone who doesn't know anything about the situation or special ed just to get their input if it's clear enough and concise enough. The other thing that you want to do is you want to make the situation unique. You want to talk about your child and what is unique about them and what is unique about their disability. Remember, another broken record, Lisa comment is you always have to understand the disability and be prepared to explain to everyone, even the educators, how the disability affects how your child learns and how your child needs to be taught. So you need to put that in your letter about the problem. And you don't want to ever get those awful answers. Well, we always handle it this way, or we've handled this situation like this before. We never make exceptions. We can't make an exception for you. You have to make your child different so that the solution is different. Your child's an individual learner. Your child should have a different approach for being a different learner, and it should be individual. The other thing that I just as a courtesy, I would tell you that you should write your letter in 14 point font. It's just easier to read for all people. Don't use some funky, Jokerman kind of font. Use, Courier, Times New Roman, Arial, the clear black and white fonts. When you write the letter, you should always put the date on it, who you're writing it to, what their position is, their email address, their mailing address. On the reline, you put your child's name, your child's grade, your child's building. And that's really, really important. And then the rest we pretty much already talked about, except for notations. By notations, that's at the end of the letter. You're going to put like CC, like carbon copy. You may put the other parent. You may put an advocate, you may put a lawyer, you may put a teacher who what isn't in the IEP meeting or isn't part of this process at the moment, but the problem is in their classroom or whatever the concern is stems from that support or that accommodation. The person providing it, the speech pathologist, the occupational therapist, those are all people who can be included if um, if you believe what's in your letter is relevant to them. And especially if you're going up the chain of command, you want to CC the people you already wrote the letter to. You don't want to seem sneaky or manipulative or conniving. Also, if you have anything enclosed in the letter, you would put enclosure down there or attachments down there. Um, and and so that is, basically the big rules of thumb on letter writing. Um, your letter should be telling a story. It should be explaining, graciously, you know, thank you for letting me participate as part of the team to develop my child's IEP. Um, my child received special ed services for 2 years. You may remember that Dr. So-and-so did a comprehensive evaluation on this date. I provided you with a copy of this evaluation and expressed concern that progress wasn't being made. I've enclosed another copy for easy reference or easy review. And then go through, like at last week's IEP meeting, blah, 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 blah happened. I had hoped this teacher would be there. They weren't there. I had hoped this person was there and they had to leave early. We didn't have enough time to develop the IEP in the way or the manner that I had hoped it would be. So I want to reconvene the meeting. That's just one example of you're telling a story and why you are, and you want the person reading it to understand where you're coming from and to feel sorry or have some sympathy that you're in this position because you felt that it was rushed. And that happens. So that's going to be very effective. If you write a letter that says, your staff failed to do this, the teacher failed to do this, the therapist failed to do this, I told you all this stuff and no one did anything. You failed to include this person in the meeting. You failed to observe my daughter. You failed, you failed, you failed, you failed. You're going to get very, very nowhere very quickly. So that is, basically a summary of the paper and why you have to do it and why you have to document it. And remember, the most important reasons is that you have to assume that all of this is going to support a claim at some point when you're seeking due process to get your child what they have been guaranteed by the IDEA. And so document, save it. And as part of the IEP toolkit that's coming, you'll have a methodology for how to put it all together and organize it so that you can easily retrieve things and find things at the meeting if you need to. So we'll continue this series tomorrow. I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will see you then. Bye.